audience right now, the Geller girls. So if you guys want to see,
I'm
Hi.
kind of extend
this is the way you promote yourself in life. This is what you do. You go, oh, I'm on the demos. So you guys should go see the Geller girls if you haven't seen it yet. It's great to see all of you. There you go.
We'll see each other.
Yes.
Look
what you have done. As you know, tonight we are sitting with designers of theater. I'll allow our panel to introduce themselves to you, starting with
Okay. I'm Clay Benning. I'm a sound designer, more specifically I'm the resident sound designer at the Alliance Theater and also freelance and persuasion at times.
Can you, to get it started off a little bit more, when you say sound designer, tell us what that means.
Oh, okay. So I'm responsible for all sort of the sonic elements of either the play or the musical, and my job description shifts slightly depending on whether it is a play or a musical. If it's a play, it's more concerned with sound effects and music and things that support the text and the emotion of the play. If it's a musical, it can be all of that, but it tends to lean more into sound reinforcement, which means sort of miking the band, miking the actors, making everything mix right and sound right in the space and make sure everything can be heard. So you tend to lean a little bit more on that than you are sort of creating sound effects. And the music, of course, in a musical is typically already done for you. That's not my job in a musical. So. I leave that to somebody else. No. Some sound designers I know that are composers have done their own musicals, but that's not me.
What if you are, I'm going to actually stand so you're looking at them. Sorry to walk in front of the camera. What if you are working with live music? How much does that affect you as a sound designer?
In terms of a play or musical? Musical. That's typically the job most of the time, more often than not. There are times that we're using pre-recorded music for a musical, like we're getting ready to do Shrek at the Alliance, and that is because it's a Theater for Young Audiences show. The music is all pre-recorded.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different thing. In some ways it's easier because we're not having to worry about the mix of the band, but at the same time it's more of a limitation because we don't have like those individual controls and there's a certain flatness to the music just because you can't quite get that live dynamic that you do with a live player. So, and a lot of it depends on how good the track is because we don't record the tracks. Typically they come to us from whoever licenses the show. So sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. It just depends. Live musicians, that's typically how we would do a larger musical, and sometimes it works it goes really easily, and sometimes it isn't. A lot of it depends on where the band is. If they're in a traditional orchestra pit, that's one thing. If they're on stage, that's another thing. If they're in a room in another floor of the building, that's a whole other thing.
Is that a thing?
That's a thing. That's a typical way on Broadway, because most Broadway houses are so small. The orchestra pits, they usually fill up with things for moving scenery and whatnot. So you may have like the music director, the conductor, and maybe like one or two other players actually in the pit, and the rest of the band would be in a room or multiple rooms, like 2 or 3 floors up, and they would have cameras and audio monitoring between the two, and they would play together, but they'd be in physically different locations. Cats used to do that, particularly in musicals. And then sometimes, the band might even be the actors. That's been done a few times before. If any of you guys are familiar with the more recent version of Sweeney Todd that was done, was it John Doyle? I think was the director who did that. That was sort of his thing for the past couple of years, where he actually casts actors, and then they're expected to be the musicians too, which is. It's a concept, and sometimes it works really well.
How's that work? They play on stages?
They do.
So if you're not in a scene, they go off and play.
They go off and play, or they might be to the side. And they do special arrangements for that, where they'll hire somebody to do specific arrangements that don't necessarily require complete mastery of the instrument. But a lot of times they will cast an actor who might play violin, already, or play piano already or something like that. I think it was in Sweeney Todd, I think Patty LuPone was in that production, and she had to learn to play the tuba. So, you know, and I'm sure it was a wonderful tuba, but that's obviously not what they really cast her for.
Right.
So,
Let's move to Kat.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Kat Connelly. I am a freelance set designer in town and out of town and elsewhere. And then I also am the charge scenic artist for the Alliance Theater. So let's see, to describe both sides of my job. As a set designer, it's basically I'm in charge of the physical world of the play. I always say that sound and lights do the emotional side, and then the scenery does the physical world with the costumes who then make the actors look fabulous. And working with the director and drawings and stuff like that. And the scenic artist side is I take the random ideas and that the designer has come up with and actually translate that into real life, working with carpenters and technical director who builds the stuff, and then I either paint or carve or make collages that are giant or myriad of other, using lots of materials that you shouldn't use in a way, using them completely different, and paint wood to look like wood, and paint steel to look like wood, and paint wood to look like steel. And that's it.
And she can paint a Fragonard too.
And I can paint a Fragonard. Yeah, that's actually another skill, is that I reproduce master paintings from pictures this big to large ones. But it's just kind of all part of the
full-scale copy.
Yes, I am a full-scale copy. And actually, I'm still cheaper.
That's right, cheaper.
Because you can actually plot drops in, big, large backdrops. They're starting to do a lot of this for touring companies and Broadway shows, although they still use a scenic artist at Hudson Scenic in Broadway. But you can actually do large-scale printing now. Very large scale, like 35 feet. I think the biggest goods is about 35 feet tall, and as long as you want it. So 120 feet, 60 feet, whatever. Large. And I can do that too. I mean, somebody sends me the drop and I put it down on the ground and paint it. And I'm still cheaper. So right now, I'm not worried about losing a job. And then the other aspect with that is also their digital file that you give to someone to plot out really big. If it's got small pixelation problem and you don't see it on your computer screen, you will definitely see that when it is blown up to full scale. Me as a scenic artist, I can correct that.
And I'm Lenoir Roberts, and I'm a costume designer. I work with the actors, I work with the clothes, the hair, the makeup, all of the accessories that the actor wears on the stage. I have a university background. I've taught at the University of Tennessee for 32 years. I've been working in Atlanta and around the country as well for about 15 to 17 years, and recently just retired and moved down here full-time. So I'm full-time now, working as a costume designer. I work with Kat and Clay at the Alliance. I've worked here at the Theatrical Outfit, Actors Express, you name it, Georgia Shakes. And so my canvas is the actor and the actors on the stage. So that's what I play with.
Nothing like having a canvas that can talk back.
And you
Or
can
moves.
squeeze.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm Chris Whittle. I'm a freelance lighting designer and electrician in town. A little bit all over town. So much like Kat, I have two very distinct jobs. So lighting design is responsible for the emotional aspect of the show, on top of general illumination, allowing somebody to see what's going on. Lighting can direct your focus and make you not see the magic that's happening off stage while you're concentrating on something else that's going on. We can pull you around from stage to stage. We can change the mood of what the actor is saying just by changing the light that's on him or the direction that that thing is coming from. And the lighting designer handles all of that. As an electrician, my job is to take the lighting designer's ideas and give them a voice and actually put that out there on stage. So the physical work of hanging all lights, aiming them, focusing, programming, and running the show, and eventually tearing it all down and putting it back where it was from.
And I'm sorry, I know you guys have questions, but my immediate response to the both of you is it seems like the two sides that you're describing of your career seem like they shouldn't be two sides. Like it seems like they need to go together. If you're gonna be a lighting designer, you should know the electrician part of it.
Yes and no. You have there's two different schools of thought of it. There's the conceptual side that yes, you have to know a basic of what the instrument does, and the visionary look at what you want to do. But as far as being able to know how far that thing needs to hang off stage to get you the exact angle that you need, that's left to somebody that has more of a technical mind. I like to think of it as artist versus craftsman. So the artist is the lighting design part of it. That's what brings the vision, the director's vision to life. The craftsman part of it is the electrician that actually works with the nuts and bolts and works with his hands to do that job.
Yeah, I'd say skilled artisan, which is basically the same sort of thing. It is, in my end, it's good that if working with a designer, it's good that they have, they need to give me what they want the color to look like, what they want the show to look like. It's not necessarily a good thing that they are, sometimes it's good that they have a strong scenic art background, but they don't have to have that in order to communicate to me. They just need to be able to tell me where they're going for, and sometimes it's better because if they don't have a full scenic artist background, because then they're giving me more trust and I'm allowed to come up with a process that I think is going to actually work better, as opposed to having somebody map out, okay, this is what I want you to do starting from the base coat all the way up, because that actually severely limits, locks me into something, and if my job is to do what the designer wants. So it is, yeah, it's both sides.
But there is a lot of artistic decisions that
Yes.
you make.
Yes, there are many
in
artistic
charge.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's the
Yeah,
same
so
sort of
it's-
thing.
yeah.
Yes, there are many artistic
Yeah.
decisions, but they are really, you don't have to be a designer in order to be a good scenic artist, and you don't have to be a good scenic artist or to be a good designer.
I will say for my field, and probably a little bit for Chris's field, that you do, because my field is so technical, that you really have to have at least a fairly decent understanding of how all the equipment works and electrically sort of what is happening. Because otherwise you're just going to be fighting it. You can have a conceptual idea, but at the root of it, what we do, particularly, and I'm talking about reinforcement here, not like creating music and things like that. When you get into the reinforcement side, you really have to understand what the equipment is doing and how it all works in order to properly implement a sound system that sounds good. So I think having a strong technical background in a lot of cases, all the way down the line here, definitely makes you a better designer on something, because you understand what it is you try to do, and particularly when you're working at a little bit, at a smaller scale. If you're working, on Broadway or whatever, and you have the budgetary resources to hire the people with the technical expertise, then yeah, you're going to spend more time working on the conceptual stuff. But a lot of times we have to wear both hats, because that's just the way it works when you're working in smaller theaters.
God's at a theater.
Well, and it's, on my end, I'm sure it works with everybody too, it's like, if I come up with something that's physically impossible, I actually need to kind of know how, I think it's better to know how things do actually get built, how structure actually is. It's helpful for me to know technical things like standard size of a door, because if I put a door on stage that's too short, I'm going to hurt my actors, because actors will run into something. And it's the same thing with stairs. I need to know the technical. As a designer, I need to know what standard stair heights are, because otherwise, if I put something on stage that human bodies are not used to, they're gonna fall. They're just gonna fall and not know why, just because if your steps are uneven, then the body doesn't know what to do. So, so it is good to have aspects of that. And I also personally think, this is a side note for me, is I think it's good that all designers have at least some semblance of a clue of what every other discipline does.
Can you give an
I-
example? Like, what do you mean by that exactly?
I mean, exactly, I think taking at least learning and having some training in every single aspect of design.
Even if it's just a class.
Even if it's just a
You know, I had
class.
to take a lighting design class.
Yeah, and I
when was in
sucked at it,
college.
but I just know now.
Yeah.
I made a B, so.
I couldn't get beyond the color palette, but I tried.
But if Kat knows why Chris needs to put a light somewhere and
Yeah.
understands sort of like
Right.
the design aspect and the physical limitations of what he can do and why it needs to be there, then she can be more accommodating when it comes to
Yeah.
working, designing scenery.
Got it. Got it. Are there any questions, you guys? How many of you are thinking about being designers in theater specifically?
I know we have some people, they're just not here tonight, yeah.
You know, Are you all seniors in high school? What's-
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're all going to pursue a degree in the arts or theater or? Yes. Well, I started, you know, I got involved in drama, my drama club when I was in high school. And I had always wanted to be a psychologist because I was just fascinated with, you know, humans and why they do what they do. But when I was a junior, I got the bug, you know, and I was in the high school musical, and I played Madame Dubonnet and the boyfriend, and I just had a blast. And I remember sitting in the backstage area, watching everyone rehearse and thinking, this is home. This is home. So I knew that was it for psychology. But, I went to, I went off to college. I wanted to be a performer because that's all I knew. That's all I knew to do. I mean, there were kids in the drama club who built the scenery, but, you know, we didn't know who they were. We were the actors. So, you know, but I got to college and I found out that you could be a costume designer. And there was a whole program at my university for that, and a big costume shop with graduate students, and there, I think that the university I went to did 26 shows a year.
Wow.
Dance, theater, graduate school, you know, graduate thesis shows, 26 shows, so the costume shop was pretty busy. And I switched my major after 6 weeks. I just decided I love the theater, I don't want to get out of the theater, but in fact, I'm much more interested in this. And it was really, in high school, I didn't even know you could do that. So right now you might say, oh, I'm going to be a performer, a director, a playwright. You don't know. You might, the more you get into it, you might, you know, little doors may open. You may discover something about yourself that, you know, means you're more interested in designing.
I also think it's on the same thing that designers need to know what other designers do. I actually think it's really good for actors to have a little bit of basis in technical theater.
Yes.
Because it means you're a guy that, one, you can communicate with people like me, because we're all geeks in our own way, but it also means you know how to ask for what you need. And then I also think it's good for every single technical person to have to get up on stage at some point in time and act in front of people. Because that is actually one of the reasons I am not an actress, because I was one. I did costumes, I actually did costumes in high school, and I switched my major from costume design to scenic design when I got to college. But I was Julie Jordan in my high school musical, and I, was up there and acting, and I thought I really wanted to do that, and then I realized that I had to throw up every single time before I went out on stage. And I could not live that way. And I was also not a very good actress. And I knew that, and there's that.
There's that.
Honestly, that just
I fell into that category. It was, I did in high school, but I never thought I wanted to do it in college. And it was just, I sort of fell back into it in college as sort of a general theater major. And I didn't really exclusively concentrate on sound until I went to grad school. So, you never know.
I have
have a question for the three of you, and we'll come back to Clay. And you guys can always jump in, you know how Mark runs it, so just don't be shy. Just think of me as a curly-headed, shorter Mark. You did it, didn't you? No. So the three of you, am I wrong in thinking that you have a very intertwined relationship as designers? Because all
Oh, we
you
can
said
include him with
costume-
that too.
You can include Sam.
Yeah, Clay is included in that.
No, I guess I was thinking more along the lines of like lights and the colors and the matching. And I mean, sound has.
No,
It-
you're a little lower than that. You know, it's funny, as my perspective sound designer, I would actually exclude Sydney. Because, and not for, but
That's because I keep putting people in hats.
yeah, no, it actually has to do with, did you work more in a vacuum? That we don't, you know, you have your fittings and everything, and other than,
Oh,
yes,
we
you're
don't see
concerned about
all
color
that.
palettes.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that you're not clashing with
Yeah.
what Kat or Chris is doing, but the choices you make, you know, with the exception of musical stuff that might impact me, don't really impact anything that other
Yes.
other three of us are doing. So if it's a straight play, I never really worry about what the costumes are until they get to the stage, and I think, you know, you guys might be pretty much in the same boat with the exception of some color choices. It doesn't really matter what the actors are wearing. Yeah, I know. I'm not but like for them to So it's different levels over. It's different
Okay,
levels.
and this is my apology to you. I should have asked the question
No, it's
differently
fine.
instead of being so.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody watch and learn about communication. This is what we are doing. Let me rephrase. What is your relationship with one another?
Well,
Contentious.
Not personal.
As you can see.
Not personal.
Possibly litigious.
one of the great things that I love about, especially the community that we have in Atlanta and other people I've worked with multiple times, is that when we sit down and have meetings at this point in time, there's at least a first initial meeting with the director and the designers together. We just kind of sit down and hash out. There actually aren't that many lines. You know, Sydney and I will talk about costumes, and we'll just talk character, we'll talk, and she'll start talking about the set. Clay will have ideas about the set. Lighting designers will have ideas about the set, or costumes or sound. And we're all we're doing is sitting in a room as artists, talking about the script and talking about what story we want to tell.
Right.
And then we all take our notes or take our ideas, and then we separate out and go off into our little corners and start hashing out what our actual responsibilities are. But having those initial meetings, all of us talking at once was actually the reason why I still do this job.
Yeah, that's the best part.
It's the best
It is the
part.
best part.
And
And we'll often all bring research that we've got. Kat will come in with pictures for her set ideas that may have seemingly nothing to do with the script. I think last year when we did Hamlet, we brought in all these pictures of trees and mirrors and people in mirrors and
just stuff, I mean,
yeah, just stuff. We all
metamorphosis,
just
I
bring in
own-
ideas and talk about the ideas and hash them out and see where we
And
best
branch out
what
from
story we
there.
want to tell. Yeah.
And, you know, it absolutely influences, you know, me, and I'm sure Chris was saying, what the visual is. You know, if it doesn't matter what I think I should be doing. If it doesn't match what they're
It's already
doing,
there.
it doesn't work. I could have the greatest idea in the world, but if Kat and Sydney have a unified concept and we're looking visually at this and I play this sound and it has nothing to do with the visual that we're on stage, then it doesn't work. So it has to.
I mean, there is
it
kind of
has
a
to work.
process too. It's like usually the set, unfortunately, comes set in costume, but set usually kind of comes first because once again, it's the largest visual you get. You know,
Right.
everything else is kind of, it branches out. Like costumes is a side tangent or aside from that because
And also,
it's also the second biggest visual.
it is, and it's
tangible.
different from scenery in that, and now tell me if you think I'm way off base. I've certainly seen avant-garde, unusual costumes, but generally I'm working with an actor's body. Kat is working with three-dimensional space.
And that's why I stopped doing costumes.
I
No, I'm
yeah,
serious.
yeah,
That's
so,
why I stopped doing
yeah, I mean, I'm
because
limited, I don't consider it
But
a
an actor's
limit.
body is three-dimensional, so.
No,
Yes.
the actor has to be able to walk walk and move and be seen and talk. Whereas Kat's working in a three-dimensional empty space and create something that is perhaps more abstract, more difficult, more symbolic.
What I usually say is a
And
pair
I'm
of pants is a
generally
pair of
working
pants is a
within
pair
that.
of pants. There are different styles of pairs of pants, but most humans have two legs.
Right.
You know,
So
this
does
is
that
the
make
standard
sense?
shape. As a set designer, and like I said, I admire costume designers so much because
Yeah, we will.
you do. Because it's also, it's so detail oriented, and I
Yeah.
love that, and I admire that, and I cannot do that. When I'm designing something, if I need a doorway, I can have a doorway, I can have a shaft of light, I can have people walk between two columns, I can have,
People walk on the columns.
people walk off the columns, how have you done that? You know, it can be anything I imagine, it can be, you know, some strings hanging from the sky, you walk through. It can be a curtain of rain, and it doesn't, I mean, there's so many things that I can say that this is a doorway.
And for my part of it, it's really important to have all of their input, because lighting is one of the last things that happens in the process. There's, you know, the set will get built, costumes are being built. Conceptually, the lighting designer's working a lot, you know, on paper and that sort of thing, but the physical action of laying all of the cues for the lighting into the console, everybody else's work is essentially done. And a lot of people are waiting on the lighting designer to light the actors, which we need them in the space to be able to do that. So I need to know what they've done in order to make my job easier to do. Because if conceptually they're going with a grayscale set and very muted costumes, well, if I come in with every, color in the rainbow, I'm going to offset and detract from what they're doing. And so the more communication that we have amongst each other.
Unless that's what we're going.
Unless that's what we're doing, exactly. And sometimes that is the case. It's the contrast works really well, but it's something that needs to be agreed upon and not all of a sudden, oh, where did this come from?
What is your relationship to the director then, as designers?
He's our captain, he or she's our captain.
And in my
First mate.
No, but I think, yes, this is something that's important to me. The director is our captain. It's usually the director who has the vision for the play and has to.
Hopefully, or at least has an idea where to start the conversation.
Yeah, I don't mean vision that they are designing the scenery. I mean, they want to say, they have a story they want to tell.
They're designing
And it's
ideas.
our job to bring our skills and our vision to the table to tell that story.
I guess I'm confused though, if you've got a script, that's the story that you're gonna tell, so when you
Well,
speak of the director
no.
coming in with a vision.
It depends on the script. Some scripts very much are. I mean, there's only so many ways you're gonna do Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It calls for these things and these characters and in this sort of time period, and you gotta have these things on stage.
Well,
You know,
there's
it's a very
standard requirements.
realistic play, okay?
Yeah, but the last time we did Virginia Woolf, I don't know if you remember, we had 26-foot tall walls that were scrimmed out that,
No, but what I'm saying is,
there's
it's not
freedom within
like Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Where you could do all kinds of things with it, with the same words on the same page,
True.
and you can take 9 million different ideas from it. If you're doing Virginia Woolf, at the end of the day, you still have to have these things, even if you
Yeah.
abstract what's going on in the background. It's gonna be really hard to set it in space. I might go see that too, but I'm just saying,
Picturing Virginia Woolf in space.
Well, I think it depends on the script. And you can have, people can get really, I think with a good director and a good cast, you can get something completely different out of even an older show like that.
Well, I want to make something clear. When I say the story we want to tell, I don't mean I want to set this play in Elizabethan England. And I mean the story about the dramatic action of the play. You can have Hamlet and have it be about, a young man gone mad. Or you can have Hamlet and have it be about a son feeling betrayed. That's the story. That's what I'm talking about. You're still dealing with Hamlet in Denmark, who's a prince. But whatever, and that will affect the design.
Yeah.
If I'm telling Hamlet the poet, or Hamlet the betrayed son, that can affect the design because it affects the mood of the piece that you're doing.
Last year, we did Whipping Man here at the Alliance. And the same year, I designed I did another Whipping Man in Virginia and then took it to California. And it's the same script. There's very much written in the script what the playwright wants on stage, what is required for this play. And if you put my set design up against the set design here, you can actually tell that they're both for Whipping Man, and they're completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, scale, size, color, it's just, they're completely different. Part of that is because they were in very different theaters, very different. You have to, we have to we work in a box most of the time. Sometimes we can do environmental stuff out in the world, but most of the time we're in some sort of contained box that the audience is either on one side or around it, but this is our set of limitations. And then the other thing is that they're completely different directions that the director wanted to go, and that's even more with it.
And I want to say something I think is really cool about Kat's career as a designer. You did 2 Whipping Mans back to back.
Back to back, yeah.
And then you did 2 Glass Menageries kind of like back to back.
Yeah.
So here's a designer who got to do 2 plays twice back, to get like one right after the other.
Oh, yeah.
But had the opportunity to rethink the play.
And doing something, yeah.
The second time she did it, she got to
was-
rethink it, and she didn't just copy her old set. She
I've done
got to.
Menagerie 4 times.
Yeah, every time we do it.
I've done that show 4 times.
Is yours the shadow?
That's Menagerie.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Oh, I've
So
certainly
we
had
did
plenty of those
Yeah.
twice.
For me,
Yeah.
3 times.
Yeah.
For the Glass Menagerie at Church of Shakespeare, that set has really stuck with me. And like all the kids at Grady High School, we went on a field trip to that show. We still talk about the Shattered Mirror set. So like, I think for some shows, like it's the tech that's even as an actor, it's the tech that sticks with me more.
Yeah.
Depending on the show.
Let's talk about a little bit about your process. You are brought onto a project. What process do you go through? Whoever wants to jump in.
I mean, number one, it starts with the script. I read the script probably 4 times before I ever talk to the director.
I'm going to ask an honest question here. Do you like reading scripts?
No, I hate it.
Okay.
Not really.
No?
Yes.
All right.
Sometimes it's hard, somewhere. I have problems reading, I do a lot of Shakespeare, sorry, I'm not trying to jump in, I have ended up designing a lot of Shakespeare. I hate reading Shakespeare. But, I still have to do it, but some other scripts I actually.
And the other thing,
but-
because of what we had just talked about the director having the vision, I want to be firmly entrenched in the material.
Got it.
So when I go talk to the director and he mentions this thing that's happening in Act 2, Scene 4, I know exactly what he's talking about. I've already got some general ideas of what's happening, and so as I'm feeling out what he or she wants to use to steer the ship, so to speak, I know which oar that I need to grab. Is that too
No, I love it.
Do you see color automatically? Do you hear sounds automatically? Do you see it as you're reading? Is it all spontaneously there, or is it slow, or is it blank the first time you read it and then?
I get into a script, I usually read a script, just read it.
Yeah.
Like I'm an audience member, listening to it, I just want to read it. And then I'll go back into it, and then I start seeing characters. And
I start seeing furniture.
I actually
I start seeing I start trying to.
Requirements.
Requirements.
Because-
What do I-
Requirements.
Yeah, actually, that's
Tell
what
the
I
story.
hate doing, is the notes, like,
That's
oh,
what's
yeah,
really-
red dress.
That's what's
yeah.
really neat about all the different versions, because the second time I read through the script, I'm looking for emotion. I want to know what the mood of the show is going on,
Yeah.
and then how can I affect that through the lighting design.
I actually visualize the space.
Do you?
Wow.
Yeah, because no show's in a vacuum.
You mean
Unless
the space of the set or the space of the theater?
The theater, the space that we're going to do the show in.
Okay.
Because I find it helps me sort of visualize the scale. And because I can't help it, I'm always visualizing like the challenges. And so I actually am the opposite. I actually try not to read the script too much before I talk to the director. I'm a big skimmer because I have to read a lot of scripts in work for budgetary reasons. So I really don't like reading scripts. So I'm always skimming scripts, and I try and read just enough to understand exactly what's going on, maybe not get every last nuance, enough to make me not look like an idiot in front of the director when we're talking about it, which doesn't always work, but you know, I try not to have too much of a preconceived notion about the show before we talk concept with the director, because that's going to change or drive everything.
Sure. I'm usually,
Well, it's like
I'm too
when we do
touched.
Shakespeare,
yeah.
I've read most of the Shakespeare's because I was in English major in college also, so I already know the plots of the Shakespeare's more or less. Sometimes I have to remind myself which one it is. But it doesn't, you know, and there's nothing on those pages that's going to inform the show we're doing, the production we're doing. And so I might as well just wait to talk with Richard Gardner and Kat and Cindy and whoever else is on the show, and let's find, okay, what are we doing with this one? Because we've done Shakespeare, the same one, multiple times.
Yeah, this is the third
And
Hamlet I've
completely,
worked on.
yeah, third
Yeah.
Hamlet, you know, fourth Midsummer, whatever.
Right.
You know, it's like, what are we doing with this one? We already know what you have to do.
Yeah, we do have a requirement.
And then also with stuff like Shakespeare, where you have a large cast, where you might be doing it with only a certain number of people, that's going to inform a lot of it too. Well, it's like, you know, when we did Comedy Bears, or no, Comedy Bears, where Kaiser and
Yeah, and.
we had the same actors playing the two
Right.
pairs of brothers,
Yes.
which
Right,
is
right.
not always the way you do it. And that completely informed what we had to do to make that show
Yeah.
successful. So stuff like that.
What is the strangest thing that you've ever been asked to do and make happen?
Oh my God.
That you've learned something from?
Oh, we
That
actually
was
learned or just
successful.
the strangest?
What do you guys vote, strangest or learned?
Strangest. Who wants to learn?
You learn from everything, right? Right.
I've had to put body parts on heads that I probably shouldn't say in this room. That's what I've enjoyed. I've had, you know, casino bras that twirl and
I
just.
loved those.
Actually, that was a really, and I learned from that.
I like saggy titwitch.
Yeah, usually my weird stuff involves, you know, errant body parts.
I had to
And she was-
figure out how to get a 3-foot size brain to spin inside of a bowl of water while being lit from beneath with no visible means of basically,
I don't know.
What show were you doing? I want to see that.
Wrinkle in Time.
yeah.
The one here.
Yeah, the one here.
There's, oh.
Yeah, it was 2012 or something.
Sorry, I missed that.
It was nice.
And you successfully did it.
We successfully did it, yeah. It ended up having like a little aquarium pump that stuck in the bottom side of the housing, which was a clear plastic bowl that this prop brain kind of sat in, floated in the water. And so the pump just pushed sideways, which put a whirlpool into the water, which caused the brain to spin. And then since it was glass, we built a frame that it rolled out on, and I buried a light underneath it, and cut a hole in the bottom side, and shot through the water.
It's like an episode of Mythbusters and MacGyver.
It kind of is that
It
stuff.
took a long time.
One of the things that Mark asked is, what are 3 essential qualities for a designer? And I said, you have to be a MacGyver.
Mhm.
You know, you have to be able to figure out. If you have a weird idea, it helps to have some idea of how to make it work.
You have to constantly think outside of the box.
Yeah.
No,
yes.
yeah.
I like that, that's good,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
There is no box.
What is that? There's no box.
Yes.
You cannot bend the box, you just simply, what is the, what is your strangest thing? Clay?
Well, I'll tell you the weirdest rehearsal note I ever got. Because, you know, when we're doing shows, we get the stage manager generates notes for the day, and then we usually get them. You know, it used to be paper, and now you get email. But anyway, so they tell you, you know, things that they decide you need to know, and mine just simply said, Kent would like to mic the chicken. And I actually knew what he was talking about. And it wasn't a real chicken. It was it was a production of a Tennessee Williams play called Lovely Sunday for Crip Corps. And in the course of the show, they're actually frying chicken on stage. And they decided the sound of the frying chicken was not loud enough. And they wanted me to mic it.
How did you do that?
Well, we didn't. And this is a good example of like, you have to put your designer interpretation hat on and say, okay, what he really means is he wants to be able to hear the chicken fry, because they were actually literally frying chicken in a pan on the stage, because he wanted the smell of frying chicken too in the theater. Which, yeah, so what we actually did was I actually recorded the frying chicken sound, and we put a loudspeaker up there, so I didn't have to have an open mic near all the grease and all that stuff. And then we actually played back a sound cue that enhanced that. So we could then make it as loud as we wanted to without actually having to have an open mic. Because if you're sitting there banging pots while you're trying to flip chicken over in oil, you're going to pick all that up too, and all you really want is the sound of the chicken frying to be louder, not the sound of everything else being louder. So anyway, not really a difficult thing.
Is that
but
something that
strange
came from
numbers.
experience? Like you talk about your interpreter hat on. Would there have been like Clay from however many years
No,
ago
you-
would have tried the mic?
This definitely gets better with experience. You learn what you shouldn't try and do. So that's that one was a good memory that I got. It was probably
Those are
10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
That was a while ago we did that. So yeah, but you do learn, what you don't want to.
Well, did you have one yet?
I don't, because the thing is that everything is strange. I mean, I get asked to, at one point, there was one drop I had to do for Color Purple that it was like, we called it salad, because it was all of these things that you would never think of putting together, and we just kind of glued it together and sprayed it green, and suddenly it became a forest. I mean, there are things like that. That happens like every day. So everything is strange. One story was like, everything is strange.
What was that one story?
Well, no, I'm just,
You can't start saying one story and then stop.
Please remember where we are.
Yeah, no. It's just going back to kind of the MacGyver thing. When we did Into the Woods at the Alliance, I had to carve the front edge of the stage. It basically took place in a giant tree trunk. And so the front edge of the stage was all carved. And that was all out of foam, and I'm working on it, I'm using Sawzall reciprocating saw.
Yeah.
Played about this long. I'm carving, and I'm getting frustrated, and it's just foam everywhere, which you can take home with you, and it covers my hats, and it's just awful. And I throw down the Sawzall, and I march into Victor's office, and I'm like, I need a chainsaw. I weigh about 25, and I'm like, chainsaw! And the next morning, I got to work, and there on my desk was a cute little chainsaw. And I'm down, and there's foam everywhere, so it looks like it's snowing. It's everywhere. I'm down in a little ball, opening up my chainsaw. At that moment, this overhire walks in, he just looks down at me, and he just uses it. I'm like, what? Chainsaw? Get out of my way!
I'm surprised you didn't poke my precious.
Doing the Shining music.
Well, let's go back to what you talked about, because I knew that Mark had said questions, but I decided to veer off, obviously. But I think that those were, I'm sorry if you prepped.
No, didn't.
Okay. What are the 3 qualities that you think are an absolute requirement to be a designer?
Sense of humor.
That's a human being, right?
Be flexible.
Willing to collaborate?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
listen?
You have to have a real.
Flexibility is key.
Flexibility,
Yeah.
adaptability, and speed.
And also, we have a vision, be a visionary. You
Yeah.
have to be a visionary. You have to have a real strong need to express yourself. Because that's basically what we're doing.
Is there ever a lot of pressure to be the most unique? Or do you just focus on telling a story?
Depends on who
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, yeah, I would say sometimes, I don't know, I mean, we've all been doing this for a while, so, I mean, there are shows that you sort of latch onto as like really, you kind of want to do a better job than just doing a show, because you feel an attachment to the piece, and the really great ones are the ones where everybody feels that.
And especially when you're doing a show for the second and third time, you always want to bring something.
You bring something new to the table.
That you have.
Sometimes a show's just a show, and you're going to do the best you can, but it's, I don't love every show I design. I know.
Yeah.
Really?
It's strange, isn't it?
But you try and find something in each show to latch onto, just for your own self, that you like. Okay, I'm really excited about this part,
Yeah.
even if the rest of it I don't really care about, or I'm not really think is all that great, or it's just not working for me. I'm going to be excited about this part of this show. Whether it's like one costume, this one moment in the show where you're just trying to pull it together. Because a lot of times you might have that. People, I see people design for one moment in the show all the time because they kind of seem that it's like their precious moment. Well, I don't know. I mean, do you see that with?
Oh, yeah.
You see that with set designers.
Oh, yeah.
They get caught up in one moment
This
in the
is
show.
the vision that they have, and then everything
Right.
goes out
They-
from there, and as the farther it gets
Right.
away from that moment, the less realized
You
the
know,
ideas actually
right.
are, or sometimes things get more and more thrown together.
They get this picture of like, I like this right
is the one
here,
picture.
and this is the moment, and everything else I'm designing goes around this moment, and then they kind of, and sometimes then they can back up from there and make it
sometimes
really
it looks
interesting.
great.
And then sometimes it fights the entire rest of the play,
Yeah.
and you wind up designing around it for the rest of the show.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
everyone.
Any questions, guys?
I have a question.
There you go.
Do you ever feel a need to fill the space, like depending on, I don't, this might sound like a weird question, but like depending on the size of the stage itself, do you feel a need to create a set that's filling the space, or are you willing to have a set that's more minimal if it?
No, I get it, that's actually a great
We just
question.
did Hamlet,
We just did Hamlet.
which was pretty minimal.
Minimal. Minimalism is hard. I mean, it's actually harder to.
It's way harder.
Yeah, thank you. It's harder
It's
to.
way
Well, it's harder
harder.
to come up with the exact nothing that you need than it is to basically yak out a lot of scenery and throw it up on stage. I personally don't necessarily like filling up the space. I like it's not filling up everything with physical items is not necessarily conducive to every single production or to any production. Because if I do that, then there's less air for him to shape or for him to shape, in some ways. So I hopefully try to do what is needed for our production and will fit in the actual theater that we're using. I do actually really pay attention, I try to pay attention to the actual physical space that we're gonna be working in, like what Clay was saying, is like, as I start reading, I actually start visualizing in the theater. But no, I don't feel like I need to fill a room with stuff. Yes.
A good scene design will fill the space even if there's only one thing on the stage.
Oh, that's kind of
That's
beautiful.
Great
What
way to
she
put
said.
that.
It's very well said.
We're going to Professor Tuck.
You had a question?
Yes, I did. This is specifically for you as a costume designer. I'm interested in costume design, and I mostly do acting, and I think that costume is very important for portraying character and
Yes.
personality, obviously. And I usually have a lot of opinions about how the costume I'm wearing should be. Like, I get kind of my own vision for it. So how do you ever take actors' input in costume choices? Like, if they were,
Yes, I do.
and
But I actually really like working with actors, and that's one of the reasons why I'm a costume designer. I've done scenery, never done lights or sound, but I have done scenery. But I really like the actor's process. I like playing around with an actor's body and putting them, and making, like, you walk in as you, and when you walk out of the dressing room, you are transformed. That's what I love. I love to see an actor transformed. I do like working with actors because they are the ones who have to go on stage and do this show. I like to hear what they have to say. I like to try to make my design organic to their instrument, that's what we call it, so that they are comfortable, they can find ways to play with it, they can make it their own. I like to give them a costume that they can then bring to life in their particular way. However, I'm the costume designer, so while I listen and I'll talk to them and we'll discuss what it is they need, they don't get to design the costume.
Well, I just wanted to ask, some of us may come from theater families, so we were just kind of put there and we were like, so what are they going to do? And sometimes it's a good thing and some of that's an expectation. Did you guys ever have parents or expectations of being in the theater? Or did your parents want you to be something else? Or what was your expectations in high school?
Wow.
You guys come from theater backgrounds and mom and dad were in theater.
My dad's actually a geologist.
Cool. Me too. I think that's awesome.
But I was the third child, so, spoiled rotten, blah, blah, blah. I was actually his last hope to go into the sciences. Yeah, it didn't work. We were actually, my family, we were more pushed into music.
Mm-hmm.
We were a very music-based family. We were told at the age of 7, you were choosing an instrument, and you were going to learn.
What was your instrument?
I was a cellist, and I started singing in high school, and I almost went into music, and then I realized I wasn't music for that either. My parents were actually very supportive, and as long as it was a way for me to express myself, and it made me happy, then they were, are you sure you want to do this?
Yes.
But they fully supported me going in. There was no pressure to not do it. I think it was like the first time they ever saw me being actually excited to go to school.
Wow.
So,
Me too.
What about you, Glenn? What's your background?
Zero. My parents, my dad was an architect, which actually helped me when I was studying scene design in college, because I already knew how to read blueprints and things like that, and I sort of had, a rough understanding of how buildings were built. So, that sort of loosely ties in, but other than that, I actually had a music background in high school just on my own accord. Nobody in my family is particularly musical. I got into it that way. So it doesn't have too much. My wife is actually a costume designer, and so my daughter is being dragged to the theater all the time. So she's going to be one of those kids.
Right,
but
I love
was
the
not.
theater. I love the theater more than anything. It's just sometimes it's like, filling your parent shoes. People just kind of expect you to do it, and you're like, well, what if I want to do something else, or not exactly what you do, but something similar? Yeah.
We're actively trying to discourage my daughter from it cuts both ways. No, anything but the arts.
What about Sydney? What was your background?
My dad was also a geologist, and my mom was a housewife. So,
did we ever talk about this?
I don't think I knew
We've
that.
known each other for years.
So, when I decided I didn't want to study psychology and wanted to, instead of going to Boston University, which was going to cost $7,000 a year, I went to the University of Texas, which cost $400 a year. They said, yes. Yes. Do theater, yes, love it.
My mother is a missionary who travels to Romania, that has done for now 20 some odd years. But they were very supportive of me. I think in first grade I was the gingerbread man. And so I grew up and I always wanted to be an actor. And so when I got into high school, I leapt into the theater department and never left essentially, and wanted to pick up on all phases of it. And when I started leaning towards more of the technical side of things as opposed to being on the stage, yeah, my parents were perfectly fine with it. And then, yeah, the in-state tuition was also.
See, I did the opposite thing with my parents, poor things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You went from
You
California
went
to
around.
Pittsburgh.
I went off to conservatory school.
Oh, like that.
We're close to time. Is there one more question that wants to?
Yes. This may or may not have been covered. It's a question for you. But I've done a lot of lighting design and some stage management and some other design, but I never actually got a sound design done before I'm going to finish high school. And I'm going to NCSA. Isn't that where you went?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going there for.
Actually, we were there at the same time.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going there for stage management in the fall.
Oh, great.
But
Yeah. John told me
Wait, North Carolina school there?
yeah. But what exactly do you do when you're designing, let's say like just a regular, like a straight play that isn't just pulling sounds online, because that's what my experience has been with the people in my school that do it. They just sort of like pull the doorbell sounds, they pull the phone ringing.
Well, it kind of depends on like how fancy you need to get with it, quite frankly, because it's like, for me, I have a library of sounds, and there are certainly commercial sound effects libraries and things like that I have, I think, and so basically I can go, onto a hard drive and search and find what I need. And a lot of times it might be finding just the right one, and it's like we don't really have to do anything to it. It's like, oh, that's the perfect dog bark. Fine, we'll just use that. We don't have to do a whole lot. For a show that might have like more abstract elements or things like that, we will do more manipulation or layering of things. For certain things, we'll actually go out and record if I'm not finding something that's appropriate. I went out a number of years ago and actually recorded a 1938 Stearman biplane for a show because we needed very specific airplane sounds that I was not going to get in the library. So I found a guy up in Cherokee County who does vintage aircraft flights. You can charter and he'll take you up in World War II era planes. And so I paid him to not fly and stay on the ground, and he just flew around me with my mic and recorded that because I needed him to do sort of specific aerial moves that I could capture. So sometimes like you got to go to the extreme and go get what you can. And then sometimes it depends on how it's integrating with the music. A lot of times, it can be a little more organic in that, like, there's sound effects that aren't really sound effects. There's sort of like elements in the music, and so it depends. I might create that specifically with a composition program. I use Logic myself, if you're familiar with Apple's Logic program.
I thought you just meant in general.
Just it out, really.
But you might, you could come up with some very sort of abstract sounds and like when we were doing Metamorphoses and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff was music and sound and sort of all sort of meshes in one. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter where you get it from. It's more about like what you do with it. And I always say it's like, I don't really care if you just pulled it off, a CD and slapped it on stage, as long as it was the right one,
Well, everybody give them a round of applause. For those who came in late.
I'm Clay Bennett from
Sound design.
Cat Collins at Sun.
Sydney Rollins, costume designer.
Chris Whittle, lighting design.
Are there any shows you want to talk about that you are getting ready for?
Let's see,
We're
we've loaded
doing
Shrek.
Shrek.
The three of us are doing
Yeah.
Shrek that loads in on
Yeah.
Monday
Okay.
at the Alliance.
What does that mean it lives in?
Well, we're going to put the set on stage, beginning and hang the lights and the sound beginning on Monday.
Yeah, our scenery is, we have a shop that's 2 miles, 3 miles away from the theater, so we build everything off-site and then truck it over.
We're actually going to take out the show that Mark's in, because
Yeah,
it closes on Sunday, Geller Girls, and we're going to throw it in a dumpster. And
we're not a comment on
we're
that.
not. Yeah. No, it's fine. It's just what we do. It's the nature of the
It's the
business.
nature of the business.
Where is the dumpster?
It's a big dumpster.
We rent them and they get all the way. Probably about 4 of them.
Chris.
So,
I just opened the Red Badge of Courage at Cabus State. I was the master electrician for that show. That's running this week, and then it moves to 7 stages at the end of February, and is there for, I think, another 3 weeks.
And if I'm not mistaken, that was costumes were designed by a student.
Absolutely, yes, they were. In fact, that entire show is student design.
Wow, okay, the entire show is.
Yeah, the entire show is student.
Oh, that's so great, yeah.
So you're just the master electrician. Thank you so
Minus
much.
projections.
Just a reminder to all of you guys, please don't forget to stop by the box office and pick up